What am I to do?
Welcome to He Said, She Said Razor Branding Podcast with Michael Russo and Jaci Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandRUSSO.com.
Michael, today's guest, Stewart Cohen with Stewart Cohen Pictures, is a delight. I think the two of you have a lot of similar approaches to storytelling and to capturing the client's voice and making sure it may be a low budget endeavor, but it's going to be a high production value. And that's what I love about what Stewart does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, old school approach, but understanding the way the world works today, and the way it's changed dramatically. The low cost of entry for people doing their own content, and still the value of having a storyteller, somebody that understands their craft and what they can bring to the table, I think is really important and a great listen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when it comes down to it, we touch a little bit on AI. We touch a little bit on the changing of production. We don't need the 18-wheeler full of gear anymore because we've got phones and other equipment to help us out along the way. But at its core, it's about knowing the target audience, and it's about crafting a story that's really going to connect with them. And that's what I loved about this conversation.
Absolutely.
What am I
Nothing else to add.
Okay,
to do?
so that's it. Let's go. Stewart, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I feel like our businesses are kind of nicely aligned. And so I think we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about. But I'd like to start with kind of a general of letting the people know who you are and what you do. So, Stewart, you have a production company, for lack of a better word.
That's correct.
Fair?
So
Okay, good.
you want a quick overview here?
Yes, please.
So, Stewart Cohen. I am a Canadian living in Texas.
Gosh.
I've been down here a while. I have a production company, and we do live action video and stills for the advertising community. So our customers, clients are ad agencies, we work through agencies to clients, and then we have some direct to corporate clients. Some of those big Fortune 500 companies that have in-house departments, we work with them directly as well. And that's one part of my world. The other part of my world is early in my career, I had the good fortune to learn how licensing imagery worked, like with Getty Images when they were forming. So that was back around 2000. So I've been doing this, just to let you know, I'm kind of like I got out of school a while ago. So I've been doing it for a while. This is all I've ever done. Anyway, so I was licensing a lot of imagery, and I did well doing that. And it actually helped the rough spots starting a career. And then obviously licensing has evolved. But the net, and I could get into this more later, is now I also own a licensing company called SuperStock.com. And we manage 23 million assets. That would be still photography and videos. So it's a different business. It's, I've always been the production company that, by listening to your podcast, I mean, I really picked up on the difference. The production company is just me. I have a support staff, but it's kind of one phone call changes everything. Whereas the licensing company, of course, we have a sales team, and we're really trying to scale another business, which is still it's still in the same ballpark, but it's a lot more different than I thought it was. So those are the two things we do, and we do them every day. And it's me plus about 14 other people.
Well, one thing is that, I was interested in reading your bio and coming into this too, and some of your suggested topics of conversation, which I think all are interesting. Really, how much it's all changed, in recent years, and the fact that the technology has gotten so affordable in a way and user friendly to where everybody and their brother has a good iPhone that does really good work sometimes. I use it a lot for things when we go on shoots, and it's just, I don't know when the last time that we had a big crew come onto something. We still do it every once in a while, but it's rare and rare because it's moved so fast, and everybody wants things, content generated quickly and put online quickly. Like, what is the role of the production company today? I'm sure you've had to change dramatically over the past 10 years, if not the past 5 years, really to adjust to the marketplace, right?
Yeah, Michael, and I think you kind of just hit the nail on the head. I mean, the moat, if you will, around what we did disappeared slowly, was disappearing as cameras got cheaper. Um, you know, actually, I think going from film to digital was a really huge jump there because really the craft got easier to learn. Um, and then, of course, the digitization of stuff. And yeah, so the cost of entry has gone from a lot to zero. And that has really taken a lot of the fluff out of the market, if you will. What used to be when I first started, there was a book, a directory that ad agencies got called the Black Book, that there were approximately 200 people in it. And if you were a still photographer and you were one of those 200 people, you were getting any job in the country. It was between 200 people. Now, there's probably 200 people within a two-mile radius in my studio. So yes, it's changed.
And for the good and bad, I mean, like I said, I love what I loved most about working with photographers and videographers was having that extra set of eyes, having the extra set of input. And as an art director, I could go in and say, this is what I'm looking for. And they would say, well, this would look really great. And I have that other viewpoint, even though I had a vision of what I wanted, 9 out of 10 times it would be better because I had somebody that I liked working with. They understood me, they understood the project, and they were seeing things from a different viewpoint. And that's the thing that I think people don't appreciate or get, is having that understanding of cinematography, of lighting, of situational, of putting things together. And I like the rough and, put together things really quickly and that organic approach to things, but at the same time, having some kind of vision behind all that can make a big difference in the end result.
That's right. I think, well, the authenticity thing that you just mentioned is people want it to feel in the moment, authentic, which again, stuff is not looking as staged, which is really good. What you get when you come to somebody like us, like say you're the creative behind it. So we get your board, we get your vision, we get your deck. It's hard for you to watch every aspect of it. If we were producing it, we're looking for the proper locations, the proper talent, wardrobe, just little nuances like our production designer in terms of the sets. So these are things that, you as the big creative idea guy should not have to worry about. And I think when we do these like really quick, low budget shoots, a lot of that stuff gets skimmed over and you lose a lot of the craft. And I think some of it was okay for some of it to go away, but for a lot of it, the nuance is what makes, whether it's a still image or a video, makes it all the more memorable.
Well, and I like to say too, I mean, even the most, it looks like it was done on a phone, it was whatever. I'm like, the ones that are really good, there's a lot of thought behind them to make
Right.
them look like there was no effort. Like the ones
Yeah.
yeah, because in the right tool in the wrong hands is the wrong everything. Just because you can doesn't mean you always should. And
Right.
sometimes it looks like that, right? But the things that you see, like, oh man, this guy's channel or these videos are so good, they're so this, and there's a lot going on that they don't really always see. And then so you try to do it yourself and you realize that soon enough. It's like, okay, why doesn't mine look like theirs? Well, there's a
Right.
reason.
And our goal is to make it look like it just fell off a truck,
Right? Yeah.
especially these days. I mean, you don't want it to feel staged. You
Mhm.
want the authenticity. And we've had briefs. It's like, can you shoot it on a phone? Like it was for a phone company, but yet there's still the same amount of production goes into it, and there's some power to the phone. I mean, the technology. Look, these phones are better than our digital cameras were when we went digital in 2006.
Oh yeah.
So, and everyone in the world has one in their pocket. I mean, that's something I think about a lot.
But Stuart, I have to jump in real quick, and I appreciate y'all carrying the weight for a minute. I mean, y'all, the two of y'all were just like ping pinging. But I have to jump in on this. So Michael and I have the same phones. We always do. Whatever the new thing is, I get it, and then he gets it. So we have the same phones. We have the same four kids. Like, we made them, I birthed them, but they're half his, half mine.
Right.
We'll be on the same family vacation. Those same four kids are standing in the same spot. The two of us are standing the same amount of feet from them. We're holding our same iPhone 14, 15, 16, depending on what era it is we're talking about. You look at his pictures, you look at my pictures, and you think, what happened here? There is something to be said for talent. He has an eye, and it is on a regular basis both impressive and infuriating that man who he thinks it's like nothing, he's like, what? I just pushed the button. He did not just push a button, Stewart. The way he looks at it, the way he frames it, the way he lights it, the composition. He mumbles some things about thirds. I don't even know the mumbo jumbo he's talking about. But all of a sudden, his pictures look like they're magazine worthy. And mine, the kids are like, I can't post that. That's embarrassing.
But at the same time, Jackie, and this is something, and I think our kids are somewhat close to the same age. I see how our kids, these digital natives, handle these phones, and I take pointers from them too, because really, in order to stay authentic and to stay current, you need to be handling these cameras the way that they're being handled. And I think there's some amazing, I mean, I see what our kids do, and it's amazing. And there was a saying once, I think it was Francis Ford Coppola said, everyone has a movie in them. And I remember this is years ago, I read it and I'm like, oh, really? His point was, everyone's got something. And so when Instagram came along and you started to see just amazing pictures from every corner of the earth, I realized everyone has pictures in them, So, and I really came to appreciate what makes us different. Like, why do we have the luxury of having this amazing job, this amazing career, when everyone in the world has a camera now? And I really cherish the fact that I've been able to continue to do it. But a lot of that, once we get beyond the craft, comes down to the marketing and how do you stay ahead of the curve, and how do you stay relevant in a world that is just looking for content. They don't care where it's coming. They just want more and more and more and more. So
they want good content.
They
want good content, Stewart. And when I think about the movie that we all have in us, for some of us, it should be a short film. And for others, it should be a silent picture.
There you go.
Not everyone should get 2 hours of my time and attention and $20, because not everyone's story is worth sitting through.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Michael's thinking that right now, and he's thinking I'm one of the ones who should have a shortened silent version. He thinks I go on and on a bit.
But again, if you think of the short and silent version, though, and this gets into a bigger conversation, and you think of, say, the strike that was in Hollywood, a good writer can take, I've heard enough about your life, Jackie, a good writer could take aspects of your life and make a really compelling story. And that's
a good writer.
That's why they're still good writers. That's why they're still here.
Yes, absolutely. And so that comes back to the need for a production company like yours, a storyteller, people who have vision and talent like you and Michael, because we are an ever consuming world of content, but it needs to be good content.
When I think, and we talk about that a lot. I mean, AI thing comes up, and our place in the world, not just today, but in the next 10 years. Where's our company going to be when we're gone and it's moved on to something else? I think the role that I like that lets me sleep at night is the fact that there is always going to be, the cream rise to the top, whatever it may be, like the people that can really hone the craft, and I respect that so much. People that have spent their lives developing something and are good at it, like radio. We used to do a lot of radio. I love radio. As a writer, I loved radio, and I still do. And we were able to own markets in radio because there was so much bad radio out there. Like really, I mean, you turn on the radio and it was Monday, 5-for-1 sales, repeat the phone number 5 times, and they followed these rules. And they're still following those same rules. They're still out there. And
painful.
You can have one great spot go on the radio, and all of a sudden it stood out. It stood out because it was good and it was easy to stay good. And I think even now, in the age of mediocrity, where everything is just flooding the market with TikToks and fast videos and garbage, really just noise, not a lot of noise, not garbage, that's a bad word, but a lot of noise. how do you cut through the noise? How do you stand out? And when you see something that's special or different or unique, it's like, oh, that's really good. Like I see your tellies lined up in the back over there on the wall. I'm a judge for the telly, so I judge
Are
those
you?
every year. Yeah, and I go through those every year, and I look at video after video after video after video, and there's always one that's like, okay, that's the one. That's the 10. That's the high mark. That's the, and there's like maybe, I don't know, 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 that has that kind of, and they all may be good, but there's those ones that are special. They just look good. They flow. The editing's good. Their cinematography's good. The story, it all just works together. And that's where the professionals are always going to have a place, I think, to lean on.
Sure. I do think the fast cut culture allows mediocrity to rise because you could, you know, and look, we do spots that they spend a lot of money on, but and they have 15 cuts in a 15 or,
Hmm.
but it's funny. I went to a thing last week with a bunch of creatives talking about Super Bowl ads, and everyone picked their favorite ads and why. And there was one guy who's actually a really great writer who picked the storytelling spots. There was one, it was a Google one, the guy that was using AI to get a job, and it was truly telling a story, which is a lost art. And they told a story in 30 seconds. And so I think when you get into true storytelling, the professionals get a good leg up for sure.
Yeah, and storytelling is a big buzzword now. Everybody talks about it. You got storytell, tell your story, and but I think people still haven't really figured that out completely. Either they go overboard with it and they become really, really, wordy, and or they talk about the wrong thing. And from a branding positioning place, we try to really target the audience's story. It's like, how do you integrate them into your story? Not just you. You can't talk at them. You want to invite them into it, and how do you do that? And that's hard. That's not really easy to always do. How do you not talk about yourself when you're spending money on advertising? People don't understand that concept. But when you're able to do that, then that's when the magic starts to happen, I think.
Right.
Stuart, I just want to call back to something in case it got missed. Michael is a voter of the tallies. You are a prospective winner of the tallies. I assure you, he can be bought. You just slip me a little cash and let me
Yeah.
know what spots need to be voted on, and I can make it happen.
Well, I wish you were a judge in the Directors Guild also.
I can
Haven't been
make
able
that
to
happen
crack
too.
that
You
one.
let me know. I
Yeah.
can get him into any organization. You just let me know.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you
I'm
can.
I'm not that fancy. Yeah, that's about as high as I go with that. But
Yeah.
You did the
yeah,
Grammys though, Michael?
I was a member of the Grammys for a while. Yep, true,
That's
Yeah,
true.
great. Now, I
yeah.
thought your background was graphic design, or
It,
was
that's
it?
where it
Okay.
And
is.
music.
Yeah, I'm trained graphic designer, but the program that I came from was really advertising design. So we learned a lot
Okay.
about copy. So I wouldn't call myself a writer, but I'm a pretty decent ad writer.
Okay.
I'm good with headlines and
Got
short
you.
quips and things like that. But yeah, I also have a little music background too. I did a lot of
Now, did you
music
go to
early on.
school? Did you get what was the guy? Was it Dutch Kepler in
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Louisiana? Was he your
Yep.
professor?
He was.
Yes.
So he's a legend. He's a legend.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely,
Wow.
yes. Most of the we used to take a trip when I was in school. We'd go to Dallas and we'd go visit all the agencies there, and it was flooded with kids from his department that all
Yeah.
worked those big agencies, Tracy Locke and Richards Group, things like that. So yeah,
I
yeah,
remember when in my younger years, there was a bunch of people that had gone to school there because of him.
yeah. It was just again Southwest Louisiana was it for a while, and it was one of those programs where you start with like 20 kids and graduate five. I mean, he was
Right.
just cut through
Yeah.
them, old school. But
Sure.
uh, but yeah, definitely. And we just had a recent gathering to kind of memorialize him with some of his former students, and it was really nice to kind of see the decades of people that he influenced. It was really
Interesting.
nice. Yeah,
Nice. That's great.
yeah.
Actually, I think we have a project that we're about to start that with a Dutch Kepler grad. I don't know if you know this guy, Scott Thibodeau. I don't know what years you are or he was, but he's somebody I've known forever, and he now lives in San Francisco, and um, just you know. But
I'm
anyway,
gonna look him up.
um,
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm going to
Interesting.
guess, Stuart, that he pronounces his last name Thibodeau and that it's Thibodeaux.
You got it. And I could never.
Well, who could imagine? Like, you can't
that,
look
that
at that and think, I know how to pronounce that. That's
yeah,
crazy. It's
that
gibberish.
accent I can't quite get. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thibodeau. No, it's funny. I saw a clip from the Super Bowl where some, man on the street was asking players on both teams how to pronounce certain street names throughout New Orleans. And it's probably the hardest I've laughed in quite some time.
I bet. I bet.
Because those spellings are indecipherable. When I first got to Los Angeles, this area is a French background. And so, although I don't have Cajun heritage, I grew up in this area. And so I pronounce words the way this area pronounces them. I get to Los Angeles and it has a Spanish influence in their pronunciations. And so I was given a hard time at my office for not being able to pronounce Sepulveda and some other kind of Spanish influenced
Yeah.
words. So I wrote out a bunch of French influence words like achafalaya and chapatoulas and was like, I tell you what, I'll go pronounce Sepulveda the right way. I was calling it Sepulveda. When y'all
Right.
pronounce this the right way, we all put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable because of heritage,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
So, having touched a little bit on kind of the Super Bowl and the marketing of tomorrow, talk to us a little bit about campaigns. What's your process for building out a campaign? No matter if you've got a local budget or a Super Bowl kind of budget, I would imagine the process is the process. So talk us through yours.
Sure. Well, just, remember coming from where you guys are, if you have a creative brief and a deliverable list, we will need a 30-second spot, a 15-second spot. We need 5 stills, when it's a branding campaign. So we'll talk with the creative team, whether they be at an agency or in-house. We'll go through a bunch of rounds with them just to kind of get our heads inside what they're thinking. And then everything we do has to do with people. So, when people say stylistically, what do you do? Who are you? Anything with people is as long as it talks back. So I've had, the opportunity to shoot cars in the past and, we could do it, but unless there are people in as a part of it, that's what I really love. I love the interaction with people. So going back to the campaign, so we'll figure out what the deliverables are, how we're, where we're going to shoot it, how we're going to shoot it. And then, of course, we go through the whole process of casting. So we'll get a brief for saying, we're looking for whether it's a middle-aged couple or a young couple or, single mom with a daughter, whatever it may be. And one thing that's gotten easier since COVID, it's gotten easier and less personal, is casting, because now, it used to be we do it live all the time. So it was really cast in close to whatever city you were shooting in. Even in Dallas, people would come from Austin or Houston for auditions, or even Oklahoma. But now, we put it out on these services that people send these self-tapes in from all over, and they're willing to work locally. So all of a sudden, like talent, you're getting this really great talent, these talent options from all over the country. Now, again, if you put yourself in their shoes, somebody from Atlanta may be auditioning for something, and they're willing to pay their way here to be a part of it. But yes, so they may be making a little less money, but at the same time, they're getting to be a part of it. So I think that means a lot. So anyway, so we'll do a casting, and I have a producer that's really great at kind of going through, we'll get this thing we're casting next week. I think 1,000 submissions have come in, and we're looking for 10 people. So,
Wow.
we sort it by gender and age and, ethnicity. And we make our recommendations, and we float that to the client, whomever it may be. And then we start the conversations from there. And then a lot of times we'll do live callbacks, on a Zoom, and talk to them as they're performing and, give them a little direction and see what we like best. And then from there, we do those decisions. At the same time that the casting's going on, of course, location scouting is happening. And we're looking for spots that fit the brief. and that are production friendly. And and so our production team is putting together, they're roughing together schedules on what days would work best where. If you're at a park, what happens if it rains? They're all the contingencies. And yeah, so they are behind the scenes making that all happen. At the same time, as a director and a photographer, I'm looking at things that are important to me, talking with the clients, talking with the wardrobe people about styling, what's the look of the wardrobe, or the production design people, like what's going to be in the house or what kind of car are they driving, and all the detail stuff. And the closer you get to the shoot, of course, those meetings become more and more regular, and we're all continually putting together decks and sharing them with one another, and adjusting as we go. And then there's usually the week of the shoot, that we'll have a tech scout, which is when we all go to the locations and we talk about it with the key department heads about what's going to take place where, what do we need, and all the really minute detail. And the challenge is, if you think about what we do, when we get to shoot day, the client's spending a lot of money, whether it's a big budget or not, it's a lot of money to somebody. And to your point, Michael, there's always a lot to accomplish in the day. So our job is to really be as efficient as possible. So that's why we always feel like, amazing pre-production goes a long way, because if it's prepped properly and everyone shows up when they're supposed to and everything looks the way it's supposed to, and you're not hemming and hawing about decisions to be made, you could get a lot more done. And that's usually the process leading up to the shoot.
I love that. And I appreciate the thoroughness of that. I think people often don't realize the amount of detail that goes into it. And they think, well, I'm just going to do it myself and we're just going to show up and magic is going to happen. We'll fix it in post. And so when people understand the amount of pre-work that goes into it, I mean, that's what it takes to do it right.
It does. And to both of your points about, the barrier of entry getting lower and so on and so forth. I mean, I made a concerted decision going back to the 2008 recession, when things started to change, thinking, okay, if I want to stay in this business, I need to figure out a way to do it efficiently and for less money, and be okay with it, and produce as good, if not better, a product. And truly, I think the technology has allowed us to work faster, more nimble. Some things that used to take us longer or cost more, the cost is diminished to nothing virtually. So there's a lot of gives and takes. And, as we continue down this process of digitization and everything, and AI even, it continues. It's like, how do you work smarter? And to be relevant and stay relevant, you need to continually be thinking about that.
Well, and when you talked about talent, that's my game changer right there. That is I will, if I know we're going into something that we don't have budget for talent, then I'll rewrite the script to be, I will get rid of people because I know we don't have the right people, if that makes sense. That is the killer, I think. If you don't have somebody that can perform on the other side of the camera, that to look natural, to say a line or whatever it may be, it's just hard. That's really hard. And not everybody has the resources to go through a casting session and to have, or even knows who to call for that. I mean, you go to certain, where we're at, for example, there are talent agencies, but it's usually people that are doing this for the weekend. They're, whatever. I found the most success is tapping into the theater community. I go find people that are doing local theater and people that are actually pretty decent at it. And, not everybody's really great at it, but there are, little diamonds in the rough where they actually have a nice resume and they've worked into the markets and they just kind of stopped doing it and they're here now locally. But you got to really dig through the trees for that, because that can kill. I mean, that is the first thing that I think looks amateur professional is the people on the screen,
Right. And indeed, and one thing, and not even tooting my own horn, but one thing that people have mentioned is, like, I love the interaction with talent. So we might be working, like, just a couple of weeks ago, we did something with Rob Gronkowski, who's a football player, so he's talent, but in a different way.
Yeah.
But then the next week we're working with guys that are in a factory, and it's about the connection that we make. And I think if you make the personal connection with people, whomever they may be, um, they tend to drop their guard. At first there are a lot of people that their guards, especially if they're real people, and we do a lot of real people stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know. I mean, if even I, once in a while, okay, the hardest class I took in college was acting for directors. You get on the other side of the camera, and all of a sudden you realize it's like, whoa, this is different. And now imagine, you don't have a lot of experience and you get on one of our sets and there are 30 people, watching monitors and watching you and tugging and pulling you and powdering you. And you're like, I could see people really freezing up. And so my job, and this is really, I think, where my value add is to get in there with them and really work with them to make it just feel natural, you know. And I love doing that. It's just so much fun.
That is absolutely it. We had a guy that we used forever with our agency, and he passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. His name was Glenn Clark, and he was my primary shooter for everything. That guy, he was my guy. I called him for little things, big things. Oh, anything that local, anything I had to get people. And the first thing he did, he was a big personality, 6 foot something, booming voice. And the first thing he did was start talking to people. And at first I was like annoyed by him, like, dude, stop, enough. Like, but I didn't realize, and I don't think he realized that what he did is everybody just relaxed. And all of a sudden Glenn was their best friend. And he got them to a place where they went from running from the camera to talking, and I learned so much from him. Just like now when I do interviews, we were just in Washington State for a client, and I had to do these quick sit down interviews. And one of the guys there was notorious, hey, he won't talk on camera. He's this, he's that, he's that. And I'm like, just let's see how it works. Spent the first 15 minutes talking about things had nothing to do with what we were talking about, just to get him on a comfort zone. And then I started slipping in questions and things like that. And that's one of the biggest things I think, for things that are on the fly. How do you get people to relax and just not be so subconscious and thinking about what they're going to say? And then they start stumble over themselves, and they can be very charismatic, but man, you put that camera on them and it just shuts down. They
It's
become
amazing.
like, yeah.
Yeah, turning that camera on, it does a lot for it changes things. So for any of you guys out there, if you're ever on camera and you hear the crew say 50-50, that means they're not saying action. They're just turning on the cameras because they're trying to catch this really unscripted moment, where you're not tense, you're not worried about stuff happening.
I love that.
Yeah.
How do I'm curious, this is kind of like more of a Jackie question too, but when it comes to the media buys, because they've changed so much again in recent years, you're not necessarily, sometimes, I mean, you probably are, but network commercials, things like that. But even then, you're dealing with so many different channels, whether it's, if you're on TV, it's Netflix and this and that and Amazon, all these different channels trying to get your media out there. But a lot of times it's on socials and things like that. And so, you may not have a huge media budget going into it. And you're saying, well, I need these spots for this campaign, and you're going to get so much viewership now versus you could understand it better when mass media, but now it's just different avenues for different things. So how do you do that as a filmmaker or video maker, when you're walking into that process?
Honestly, I mean, that is downstream from us. So a lot of time, I mean, we do the edit on a lot of stuff. So what we're tasked to do is to finish the pieces, whether it's in different aspect ratios, different formats for different media, but we don't do the media buying. If I did do the media buying, I would be in a different business, and it would have been a better business.
So it's easier when you have it in front of you. Like, you don't even need to know. Just, hey, I just need
Well, we just need the
specification.
deliverables. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. If it's
yeah,
like 16:9, or now you have, the vertical, like for TikTok
yeah,
and
yeah.
Instagram, and every a lot of these streamers, all the pre-rolls have different specs. So we'll take something. Sometimes we need to deliver the same thing like 15 different ways.
Hmm.
So it fits with the media, because you have to get the list from the media company on the formats in which they want them delivered.
But budgets have something to do with that, right? I mean, if hey, this is going to be going here, so we have this kind of spend on that, so we can have more for production versus, where does the
Sure,
money
but
go?
a lot of times that again, gets decided by the agency, and we get, we try to, of course, take on as much of the budget as possible and as many responsibilities as possible. But the media buying is normally done elsewhere. Whether agencies used to have it in-house, and then there's also media buying companies.
Yeah.
That so basically, when they're putting together the project, of course, they'll say we want it to run in XYZ, and they'll have their costs there, and they'll usually take it out of the overall budget of the campaign before we see it. And then, of course, we always hope that they run it more places than not. But one thing, it's funny, after listening to you guys talk on some of your other podcasts episodes, I think one of the things that's of interest with, say, our company is, Jaci always says you're the creative and she's the brand person. And, being a small business owner, one thing I've had to do, and especially with changing over the years, is like I'm both, and I like being both. I am the key creative at the company, and I do have support that takes care of me, but I'm also strategically the guy that decides how we're going to manage stuff. So that's been interesting because it forces me to stay really up to date on what's going on in the industry, what's going on with media technology, and it keeps it really fascinating, I think.
Well, and it's, and a lot of people talk about that, taking a long form video and chopping it down for smaller content. How do you turn one, long form into a bunch of social media content, a bunch of small forms, things like that? And I think that works fine to some degree. I think you need to do that. I mean, how do you make your content stretch and move and do more with it than normally would be expected of it? And I think, again, it's challenging versus, hey, I'm doing a series of 30-second spots,
Right.
And I know exactly what's going into that versus now I got to do something for multiple channels, multiple audiences, multiple outlets,
Right. But do you remember a few years ago, they would just say, yeah, and then we're going to do an edit for social. And I think what's happening now, which is really, really great and interesting, is the endings to everything. Like we're doing it differently. So you might have a 30 or a 15, but then, or you have a 30, but the ending and the 15 is going to be different. So you have to do a different takes just for the 15. Or that in the verticals, the 6-second ones for TikTok and or Instagram, I mean, there needs to be a different approach, and that it has to be shot vertically. So you need to make sure that all the information in the production design sits in that vertical little slot as well. So there's a lot, I think as I think the new media is maturing, we're starting to see some nuances that we could all incorporate to make it more successful.
And I don't, and again, back to, people doing it themselves. I think that's when you can, that's great. But 9 out of 10 times, like I just saw something came across my desk earlier and somebody had shot something on location for something. And I'm like, what were y'all thinking? Like there was stuff going on here in the background, the lighting and whatever. And it was unusable in a way. I'm like, I can't clip that into what I need. And there was like this guy in the back drinking coffee. And I was like, we have nothing to work with. So you really have to really be creative in how you're solving those problems and how you're trying to figure out ways to use things that weren't intended to be used, So yeah, like I said, it's a gripe for me because I wish we always had budget to go bring in specialty teams. And I think what you said is that you try to make your business to where you are able to bridge the gap some, right? And fit in.
You have to. It's I think it's for survival and also for fulfillment. I mean, I've always said, a project it needs to fill a couple of criteria, either creative, money, or relationship. So, if I have a relationship with you, like you said about the guy you used to work with, it doesn't matter what your budget is, we're going to try to make it work, or if your creative is great without a big budget, we're going to make it work, So I think but it has to fit one of the criteria to do it.
Yeah.
And honestly, we're really learning, like I said earlier. I mean, I think the tools have allowed us to do a lot more with a lot less, and without sacrificing quality.
Right. One of the things that I was thinking about as y'all were kind of talking about the process, and Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, have you ever been handed a budget by a client and thought, oh no, this is too much? Don't you
Yeah.
creatives always want more money? I mean, come on.
No, we always do, and there have been times, but I'm usually wrong. Like, because usually when somebody says they have X amount and it's more than, sometimes what I've found in the last couple of years is we're so used to having shoestring budgets that, all of a sudden you get a real budget. You're like, whoa, whoa. But it's amazing how fast, if you're doing things, I'm not going to say right, but a different way, how fast that money disappears. And like, look, if you're doing like a pharma campaign and it's SAG actors and, there's union rules and stuff like that. I mean, it goes a lot quicker, and I think that's why you're still seeing there's real advertising, because there are rules, and there are rules in place for a reason, in certain portions of the industry.
For sure. Michael leaned forward like he had something really insightful he was about to say.
No, I was thinking about a couple of things. Actually, I have so many things in my head right now. But the rules, like they're changing, like they're evolving right now. I mean, there's so many things that from a person that creates content, like how are you dealing with those things, like AI thing, but like generative content being developed, stock companies that are able to type in what I want and they do it, and they're not quite there yet. I mean, they make it look really cool in the advertisements, and you go try to do them and they don't work out. Somebody has five
Right.
fingers and six fingers on one hand, and weird stuff going on. Like it's not quite there yet, but I think it will be as we move on. They're going to keep refining that stuff and getting better and better and better at it. And having to use those tools, we've had to use them in writing and things like that because to keep up with everything that's going on. If you don't, I think you will get left behind. How are you guys adjusting to that? Are you encouraging that to as maybe not using it right now, but understanding what's out there?
Well, definitely understanding what's out there. There's no question. Certain rules, like just say bigger picture, like say when you get into the union rules and talent and stuff like that. I mean, there are reasons why we shoot overseas still. You shoot in different countries, whether it's sometimes because the dollar goes further. We've seen that for years. Sometimes because the talent rights are different. You could buy out a talent where you couldn't do it in the United States. So there's a lot of rules that in production that we've been able to get around by doing stuff overseas. It's not even getting around rules. It's just changing the landscape and doing it a different way. There was one car campaign, again, it had people in it that we did. We ended up shooting in Santiago, Chile. And check this out. It was cheaper to shoot it in Santiago than it was to shoot it in California or in Texas, which included shipping the cars from LA to Santiago and back. And when they did the math, I'm like, I can't believe it's cheaper to do that. And
Wow.
so that's one way. But getting back to what you were saying about AI, yeah, it's coming down the pike. There's no question. We're starting to see a lot of layouts. Oh, here's a funny story. We did a job in the last couple of months. And I saw the layouts, and I've seen a bunch of them now. A lot of people are doing layouts in AI. And I just glance over them. Oh, it's a guy in a garden. He's fixing this, da 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 da. And when we finally get to set, we found the perfect spot, perfect talent. We finally get to set. And I'm looking really closely at this comp that I had been given by the agency art director. And I'm thinking, damn, I mean, that's really good. And I'm like, where did you get this? Like, why didn't you just use this? And he said, oh, it was AI. And that's when I kind of bit my tongue a little bit thinking, oh, geez. I mean, if I was an advertiser and there were no barriers to using that content like copyright or stuff like that, which is still floating around, which is another conversation. But I could see it being used. And I think
Right.
that's just going to be the way it goes, and I think that's we've seen the evolution of our craft change and change again. And I think the middle class of what I do is gone already, and that happened years ago. So, I think people are stepping away from the industry because there's a lot of competition and a lot of things like the AI that are just going to, people are going to say, oh, it's easier to do something else. Um,
Right.
but that's fine. And that's fine. It's like, but it's the people that love it that really wake up every morning yearning to do it that should be doing it. I mean, I've met a lot of people in the industry that were doing it just because they thought it was easy. I mean, it's better than hanging sheetrock, but, you know, um, but I love the craft,
Right.
yeah. And I love the interaction with people, with agencies. I love finding the work, landing the projects. All of that is it's a real big it's a giant challenge every day.
To your point, Stuart, as AI comes in and provides some time efficiency tools, we still need thinkers. We still need strategists. We still need storytellers. AI may save us a little time here and there with some of the pre-production details, but it's not anywhere near good enough yet to create the whole campaign.
It's not. And but in time, it'll fill the void for a lot of things. I don't know if you've seen, I mean, and they always cite like the Mandalorian, but it's these giant video walls that are now popping up everywhere that they're called um what are they called? Volume walls. And the cameras can move like with parallax, so it doesn't like look like you're shooting on a background. It looks like you're shooting there. And they also have ceilings, so you have the sky or clouds or you know, so it's virtually like you're on the set. But in one
Okay.
day, I remember somebody showing it to me a couple years ago, and they said, "Yeah, this was all shot in a studio, and it was a music video, but it looked like it was in fields, and it was on the Brooklyn Bridge, and it was here and it was there." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And they're like, "Yeah, we shot it all in one day," and it blew me away. So in essence, that's another leap forward, and I looked at that saying I got into this because I love shooting on location. I mean, one of the reasons I got into this was I love to travel and I love to meet people. And, I've been on planes though my whole career. And then sometimes it's like, hey, if I could take you in a studio and have you in 4 different countries today and you get the job done and the client's happy and it's a success, that's the way it's going.
Right.
And
Yeah,
those backgrounds may be AI. Currently they're still using live footage for it, but like eventually, yeah, I want a cityscape with the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it's going to be able to do that in a second.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to get more expensive too. Right now, a lot of that
Yes.
stuff's free or just playing with kind of things, but eventually they're going to start putting price tags on it. It's going to become unattainable for a lot of people.
but that's good because that
Yeah,
means I'll still have a job.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I remember
Absolutely.
we were talking about storytelling earlier, and one of the spots that came on the Super Bowl was a Pfizer spot, and it was a kid boxing, runs out in the
Right.
street, and for a company like Pfizer, who I think is sometimes the evil empire for some people, and they're just big pharma companies, that kind of thing. But they put a warm fuzzy on them that I was like, that's the power of storytelling. I mean, and at first it was like, oh, the kid's running through the street and it's cute, he's boxing. And I remember turning to Jackie and said, this has got to be please let this be a cancer ad because it was perfect
Yeah.
for that. And it was.
Yeah.
But the way they ended it, when he ran up to his mom and all of a sudden the cape was gone, the gloves were gone, and she hugged him, and the emotion in her face when she held her little boy, and they had flashbacks of him going through the procedures. That's
Yeah.
when it, that's when it was like, oh, God, I
Exactly.
mean, whoever did that just nailed it. The first part was good. The second part was like, that was it. That was the moment that everybody can relate to, and everybody
Right.
probably, had a tear in their eye about it. It was like, yeah, I know somebody, and I feel that moment, and
Right.
yeah, it was powerful.
But even think about there was a Lay's potato chip one with the little girl that she finds the potato that, it
Uh-huh.
get picked up, and she kind of nursed it, so to speak, and had it grow, and how proud she was, and that whole story of her putting the umbrella in the rain over her potato, and and again, it was a great story. And again, if you put the spin of a great story on things, I think a lot of people look at it in a different light.
Absolutely. How do you
Yeah.
deal with bad stories coming into shot that you have to shoot? Like somebody brings you a bad script and it's just not right. You know it's not right. And you're like, okay, how much do you agree to bear it? At what point do you say I can't do it? Or, it's like I'm gonna do the best I can with it. Like how do you approach those angles?
Come on, we're somewhat in the same business here, Michael. You know that. You've gotten those briefs from clients. You try to add your level of integrity to the project and steer it where you feel like it might have a little more integrity. And I mean, we are a business.
Mhm.
We are a business. We do have clients. Our job is to fulfill our clients' wishes, and giving them, of course, the best guidance that we feel. Like we'll always say, how about if we do this, or what if you do this, or you're always giving them options, and trying to really add some level of I'm going to say integrity, to something. So the last thing you want is for them to show it to one of their friends and they say, oh, that's chintzy and crappy, and like, you don't want that. So
Yeah, we've kind of Jackie's done a really good job with that, and her sales team. Really, the first 10 years we were order takers, I think, more than anything, and because we're paying bills, we're trying to survive, and we did the good work where we could. In the past 12 years or so, I think we've really gotten to a place where we've done a better job of choosing clients that work well with us. You don't always get to choose, but we've done a really good job as of late of getting people that really kind of have that partnership and that relationship, that trust. And she kind of has a rule of threes, like you have a three-strike policy. They come to us and they say, no, we'll come back again. We'll try to explain it better. Then there's a second time. Okay, look, hey, this is what we're really recommending. This is what we think's best. And if there's three, after the third time, they're still not listening. It's like, all right, it's your money. We're going to do what we're supposed to do. But we're going to try. We're going to try at least twice to kind of get somebody to listen, that maybe this
right.
is a better option.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to do that, and hopefully it works for them and they come back. But if they never come back, that, it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Stewart, this has been a pleasure. I'm shocked to look up and realize it's been almost an hour because the
I am
time has
too.
flown by. I
Wow.
mean, there's just no way. I was like, I went and checked my calendar. I was like, did we start on the half hour? How have I missed this?
I just did the same thing. I was like, are we almost out of time?
But that's what happens when you have a great guest. So
Well,
compliments
thank you
to
so
you,
much.
Stewart. Thank you.
No,
So tell the people where they can find you, because I want to make sure you're easily accessible and people reach out to you to get your guidance and advice on their campaigns.
absolutely. Well, it's Stewart Cohen Pictures. Instagram is SC Pictures, or stewartcohen.com, or SC Pictures on the web. On LinkedIn, of course, you can find me. We're based in Texas. We travel everywhere to do whatever needs to be done. American Airlines is based here, so it's kind of like our taxi, and and anything to do with people, we love, and yeah, we love telling human stories.
I love that. I love that. So people listening, please reach out to Stewart Cohen Productions and make sure your next story is told properly.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on. It was really great to meet you.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, you take care.
You too.